It is written in our Constitution that the state shall protect and promote the right of all citizens to quality education at all levels and shall take appropriate steps to make such education accessible to all. With the month of June just around the corner, many parents are enrolling their children to the new school year. However, over the last few months, there have been many reports wherein some schools have committed acts that have raised concerns for many parents. Some of these acts involve putting the students' safety at risk within the school walls and outside the school premises while under their custody. Another act committed by some schools are the tuition fee hikes and adding questionable fees, such was the case of Alex.
Isang estudyante, incoming 4th year sa isang sikat na computer school dito sa Manila. Okay naman, pero may mga difficulties din na about sa system nila na parang medyo nagpapakomplikado sa mga estudyante. Tulad ng pagbayad ng tuition fee, kasi dati may ginagamit sila na system. Doon mas madaling magbayad, walang mga conflicts. Pero nag-upgrade sila, sinasabi nilang nag-upgrade daw sila, tapos doon na nagkakaroon ng conflict sa mga pagbayad. Tulad ng pagtaas ng tuition fee na hindi namin alam. One time kasi nagbayad ako ng midterm, tapos sinulat nila doon yung kung magkano na lang yung babayaran ko. Tapos nung pagdating ng final examination, edi nakasulat na yung magkano na lang yung babayaran ko. So yun lang yung dala ko pera. Pero nung magbabayad na ako, parang pinakompute ko lang ulit kung magkano yung babayaran ko. Tapos dumating sa point na, ayun nga, parang hindi nila binawas yung tinatawag nila na political discount doon sa babayaran ko. Inad nila kung magkano yung nasa political discount. Sakto lang yung dala kong pera. Kaya hindi ako nakapag-exam nung araw na yun. Special examination na lang ako. Tungkol naman to sa mga extracurricular activities, tulad ng mga concerts, anniversaries. Inaengganyo nila kami na bumili ng ticket para umattend sa nasabing event. Tapos sinasabi nila na may incentives kaming makukuha. Tapos yung mga ibang prof, sinasabi naman na parang medyo mag-aalangan kami, ay parang medyo babagsak kami sa subject nila kung hindi ka bumili ng ticket.
When it comes to tuition fees, what should be included? What are the responsibility of schools regarding the safety of students? Can schools be penalized for acts that are rendered as unethical? Good evening, I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno and you're watching Legal Help Desk on the Solar News channel. This show is about making the law work for you by giving legal advice on topics that matter to you. Tonight, we will be discussing your legal rights on the issue of tuition fees and school liabilities, what you need to know about the responsibilities of schools on their students and what you need to do should they violate any of their obligations to them. Our guests for tonight are Representative Antonio Tino of Alliance of Concerned Teachers or ACT Party List and Dr. Luz Almeda, Regional Director of the Department of Education, NCR. Good evening and thank you for being here, Director Luz and Congressman Antonio.
Good evening, Attorney Karen.
So it's an exciting topic because June is approaching.
Yes.
It's this week na, and of course, the concern for most people is re-enrolling or choosing schools for their kids. And we have cases like Alex, which is a valid concern. You have schools, for instance, that prevent students from taking exams pagka hindi nabayaran yung ibang bills. Is this allowed? Maybe we'll start with you, Director Luz.
It depends if the school is a public or private schools. Sa public schools, there are no tuition fees except for high school, elementary and high school, except voluntary fees, which can be collected within the year, which need not be collected upon enrollment, let's say June, July. But in the private schools, they have more or less autonomy in terms of internal management of the schools. That's why I advise the parents and the students to read carefully the student handbook, which contains the conditions, the guidelines in the guidelines upon enrollment, and all other requirements and
Director Luz, for instance, in Alex's case, kung nandun siya sa student handbook, nakalagay clearly that students who have unsettled accounts cannot take the exam, then he can't really do anything and complain to the DepEd kung hindi siya napayagan.
Kaya nga, that's really a problem. We cannot compel the school to allow the student to take the test or even release the records or documents, like if the student decides to transfer to another school, let's say public schools. But the documents, the report cards are not released.
Yes.
So we can only appeal to sound judgment of the
And this is
principal.
for private schools, but public schools,
Yes.
they cannot withhold
There's no problem
taking
because
of
we have
or the giving of
clear-cut guidelines that nobody should withheld or withhold documents or report cards for non-payment of any fees.
Or you cannot prevent the student from taking exams for unsettled accounts. Pag's public school, but not for private. Congressman Antonio, do you have any pending bills or suggested legislation to address this problem? At least basically gap in the law, because marami namang naka-enroll sa private schools.
Well, first of all, I just have to mention the case of the UP student, the UP Manila student who committed suicide. So it came out because of this case that UP still in its code still has provisions which prevent students who fail to settle their accounts, prevent them from attending classes.
I'm sure a lot of people are wondering why UP, because that's public. But the problem is they have their own charter, meaning they, by law, they have their own parang sarili nilang constitution, no, na kung ano yung rules nila. And apparently in UP, they still have this provision.
So this is an issue with the community of UP. You know, the students and faculty, I am aware, have an ongoing campaign to review and to amend, revise these. These are discriminatory provisions. Now, as to your question, pending legislation in the 15th Congress, which is almost concluded, I co-authored some bills and resolutions, including one that encourages or that basically asks private schools to abandon their no exam, permit, no exam,
no payment. No
policy.
payment, no exam policy.
And that was heard by the Committee on Higher Education, but it remains, up to the end of the 15th Congress.
But at least it's good to know that it might happen, no?
But let me just note that resolution and the investigation, in that investigation, there was strong resistance from school owners, basically. They consider the withholding exams to be an important tool for them
to
ensure payments.
Yeah. But what about policies na pag na-force yung mga students na bumili, for instance, ng tickets, as Alex mentioned, is that allowed? Does DepEd have an order, for instance, to prevent schools from doing this?
There is a department order that disallows any collection.
And this is for private and public school?
Primarily for public schools.
Okay. So private pwede? Or
pwede.
Pero pwede magreklamo if it goes beyond yung parang medyo forcing students. So like Alex
the selling of tickets to teachers, students, and school administration is really disallowed.
Okay, that's good to know. Now let's answer a few questions from our viewers with the help, of course, of Director Luz and Congressman Antonio. Our question comes from Leila. What are the DepEd or CHED's policy on schools withholding the students' report cards and other credentials because of unsettled accounts? This is what you've answered na, no?
Yes.
There's a difference kung private school, so far there's no really clear regulation because DepEd has not issued regulations on this. Pero pag public, bawal. Yes. Okay, our next question comes from Jackie. And Jackie asks, my son has been bullied on and off the school grounds. I already addressed this to the teachers and principal, but still my son comes home in tears. How tolerant should schools be when it comes to students bullying other students? Shouldn't they take bullying seriously and put a stop on it once and for all? Okay, interesting question.
Yes, yes.
Would you have any?
That's really a problem nowadays. That's why we have required our schools, in the public as well as in the private schools, to have guidance counselors who would look into children showing signs of being bullied and who are bullies. In fact, there's a movie that highlights the dangers of bullying, and we'd like to show this to our schools come June. But we have some measures in our schools to ensure that we can eliminate, if not minimize, bullying in schools.
Okay, that's good to know. But this has already been distributed to the schools, or it's coming out pa lang?
We have flyers as well, and we have trainings last summer for guidance counselors and principals to identify and to address problems of bullying.
That's good to
in
know.
our classrooms.
And for parents, for instance, if they feel that the school is not doing enough to address this problem, they can complain to...
lodge a complaint to the superintendent and then forwarded to the regional office.
Okay, the superintendent of DepEd.
Of the division.
Okay, of the
where
division
the school
where the
belongs.
school is. Okay,
Yes.
that's good to know. And then our third question is from Jessa, and she asks, are school buses part of the school's liabilities? Okay, this is, I think, this is also a legal question, no? Kasi school buses, it depends. Under our law, if it's run by the school, then you can hold the school liable. Yes. But for DepEd or CHED, do they have regulations making the school primarily liable for school buses? Or kung merong accident na nangyari sa loob ng school bus or while the kids are riding?
It depends. The teachers as loco parentes, second parents, are generally liable for whatever happens to students within and outside the campus. However, if the teacher, after investigation, shows extra diligence and has ensured that the safety and security of the children are being taken into account, then in that case, the teacher may not be liable.
Okay. But, sorry, Congressman, do you
well,
have...
I think this is one area where Congress or you know, even the executive should look into, you know, who actually regulates school bus services.
Buses, yes, because this is a great area.
Like school tours. Over the summer, there were some cases where schools going on field trips. You know, there were accidents and some students were killed. So the question there is who actually regulates? Who makes sure that the
safe in school bus.
The school buses are safe. The tour operators are accredited and so on and so forth. So that's
so
a question.
Congressman, would you suggest then na because right now under the civil code they can still be held liable, the school bus driver or the school bus owner or even the school, but it would depend on who they prove to be operating the school bus. Because if it's really a school activity, they can be held primarily liable. But then if they can also show that there's the contractual relationship is really with the school bus operator and the students separately for a trip, then pwedeng yung operator lang. But maybe are you suggesting that Congress should have regulations to regulate mga school bus separately and basically any transportation that involves students?
Yeah, well, that's something I would be interested in is who actually is in charge of
making
sure that school bus operators
I think
follow certain safety standards and so on.
Managed by the Land Transportation Commission.
Yes. I just remember, diba, may case sa US na nag-hostage taking inside the school bus. So it just makes me wonder, in that case, if there were injuries to the kids or kunwari, worst case scenario, may mamatay, who can the parents go to quickly, diba? Because if you just say, okay, then you file a case against the school and the school bus operator or the hostage taker, then it's really such a prolonged process,
Yes.
diba, for the parents.
Yes.
So I think this is something that can be simplified. But currently, in terms of DepEd, wala pang.
So far, we don't have a specific policy on that yet.
Okay. Well, let's take a short break. Legal Help Desk will return after these reminders. You are still watching Legal Help Desk on the Solar News channel, and we are still joined by Representative Antonio Tino of ACT Party List and Director Luz Almeda of DepEd NCR. Good evening. And we had an interesting discussion before the commercial break on yung mga regulations that are lacking, yung distinction pa between public and private schools. So I think this is a time that we can ask Congressman Antonio, what are any suggested regulations by either your party list or other legislators or pending bills that might cover yung liabilities for accidents covering students or yung mga pagka nagkaroon nga ng suicide or any damage because of policies of schools, because
or absence of
yes,
policy.
exactly. Like for instance, he raised a good point na yung sa UP, they refuse to grant an exam or pag
She
yung
was
mga
not
ganon.
allowed to enroll.
Yes, or re-enrollment. Pag mga ganung instances, then you can say, but it's in their provision sa charter nila na bawal talaga. Any relevant legislation that maybe we can look forward to?
Well, as I mentioned, in the current Congress, although nothing was enacted into law, there's legislation to do away with the policy of requiring the permit before an exam. So that's one that should be pursued and we will pursue it in the 16th Congress. With regard to bullying, for instance, there is again pending legislation in the current Congress against
the child protection
bullying.
policy.
And DepEd has a child protection policy. I think
What's a child protection policy?
It provides protection and guidelines on how to prevent bullying in the classrooms.
That's good.
Well, but I think what's important, absent the legislation, is the training of teachers, for instance. It's important
how
that
to handle.
Yes, that teachers are given adequate training
Yes.
when it comes to how to identify bullying and what to do.
Yes.
No?
What about identifying depressed students? Do you think that should be the teachers or the school's responsibility?
Actually, it's
Because
the
that was
teachers, the school's responsibility, because sometimes dysfunctional children come from dysfunctional parents. So it should be the responsibility of the teacher to identify who are these potential dropouts,
Yes.
the potential bullies, so they can be given the necessary counseling.
The concern there would be the capacity of DepEd.
To regulate.
One of the we talk about the shortage of teachers. Of course, DepEd is trying
We
to
now have
address
new
it.
items,
I know,
61,500.
but we can also talk about the shortage of guidance counselors.
And
There's a huge shortage of guidance counselors.
we need
who
more
have the-
psychologists also.
Exactly. So that's that's a problem with implementation. Another thing, DepEd, for instance, as far as I know, doesn't have on a national level a standard set of regulations on school policies. Like private schools, they have their student handbooks, but
Yes.
in public schools, walang ganon.
Walang
We have
standard
department
for
maybe
of
everyone.
orders. Yes.
Yes, no.
We
So
have
that
rules
would-
and regulations and policies.
We'll
also
know more
help.
about these.
Issuances.
Yeah, we'll know more about these rules of regulations maybe when we answer some of the viewers' questions. And we'll start with one from Mira. Is the school still liable for their students when there is a typhoon and they still require students to go to school? What about college students? So ito yung mga, minsan may mga nagko-complain nga na kinall off yung classes but too late. Stranded na yung mga kids sa school or nabaha na sila. Who's liable in that case?
Well, we have clear guidelines pag signal number 1, suspension ng classes sa lower grades. Pag signal number 2, higher grades, high school or college. Pag the schools insist that the students should be in their campuses, the school should be liable for that.
So they can, the parents can complain. Kung kunwari,
I think so.
ended up na nandun, nag-overnight na yung mga anak nila because late yung pag-declare, then they can complain to DepEd.
But actually ngayon, because it's the city mayor or the mayor, the local executive, automatically declares in coordination with the Pag-asa and the barangay kapitan. So it's faster ang declaration for suspension.
Okay. So parents can rely on that. Na pag declare na ng mayor, they don't even have to wait for the school to announce
That's
it.
already official.
Okay. What about, it's okay, let's have another question from Twitter. Albert asks us, are DepEd and SHED the only government agencies that handle problems parents might have with schools? Is that
No,
the only?
we have we have DSWD.
Ano hong jurisdiction if it's DSWD?
And DSWD is from
Early childhood.
For children below 5 years old.
Okay.
Because 5 years old, for the public schools, is already kindergarten. That's compulsory already. And then 6 years old is grade 1. So lower than 5, and the out-of-school youth, they are still the responsibility
Of the
of
DSWD. Okay. And another question we have is from Magno, and he asks, why is DepEd vehement in recommending stage plays and other extracurricular activities for so-called students' emotional development? Can it be an option not to join these extracurricular activities? Meron bang ganun talagang policy ang DepEd?
Yeah, we are trying to limit because sometimes it's being abused. And because of financial constraints, the students are forced to be absent from school because they could not pay the fees or the stage play. How much does it cost nowadays? 150, 200, sometimes 500. So for the public schools, as much as possible, we don't want any contribution.
Okay, this is only for public schools.
Yes,
okay.
But the private schools have their option.
So they can require it as part of the curriculum. Yes. What about, I'm curious, yung pag-require, I've heard some schools now require the parents to buy their kids iPads kasi doon na linalagay yung mga materials for the class or yung books. Paano kung yung parent has something against it because they feel na, I don't know, lalagyan ng games or it's too expensive because it is expensive. Is that allowed for schools to require that as part of their curriculum?
Primarily, it's the school that should provide this equipment and facilities. But in the public schools, we don't. We provide. The government tries to provide all the resources, equipment, and facilities.
But if a private school requires it, it's not. It's not really a violation.
It's not. It's not.
Okay, so at least it's good to know for parents, no?
Yes, yes.
And then another interesting question would be pag injuries inside schools or school activities. Siguro mas gray area when it's a school activity and it happens outside of the school, but it's arranged by the school. Kunwari, a trip to the museum and may nangyari, may na-aksidente na bata. Who can be held liable in that case?
Sabi ko, depende. It depends. It depends.
Siguro, but I know under the law, the school is primarily liable if they have the control and supervision, I mean, during that time. Meaning, if it's a school activity, then pag may nangyari dun sa bata, they're primarily liable. Yes. Isa pang question would be among students, pagka sila yung merong dalawang nag-away na bata, and merong may nasaktan na bata. then in that case, it's really the school primarily liable to the injured child, and then the parents are secondarily liable, right? Yung parents na nanakit.
But Karen, an interesting question here, an important question as far as, for instance, teachers' rights and administrators' rights are concerned is, when you say the school is liable, as far as I know, in our system, it's actually not the school, but the individual teacher or principal who is held liable.
Yes.
No? And then, pag nagkakaso sila, it's their own personal, you know,
I think
defense.
because
So it's unlike in, you know, some other countries where there's such a thing as institutional liability.
Yes.
Dito, parang walang ganun eh. Di ba? Tama ba, Director?
Hindi. Oo, tama ka dyan. Oo.
Pagka
It's either the
may nangyari sa
principal or
bata,
the school, the teacher.
nagiging personal responsibility.
Yes.
So that's something
So what's the
that,
standoff act on here? Because
Well,
obviously teachers don't make a lot of money
exactly.
to be
Oh, it's a
held
heavy
liable
burden.
for this and to have to
It's a heavy
pay for a
burden.
lawyer just
Oo.
to defend
Exactly.
themselves. So ano
It's a
yung-
very heavy burden
Yes.
on teachers,
Yeah.
no? Well, that's why we want to develop this practice of institutional support and institutional liability. So pagka may kaso,
Provide legal...
yung administration, yung
Legal
administrator or teacher, dapat the teacher was just performing his or
Yes.
her duty.
Maybe
Then
Congressman,
dapat
a
merong-
good idea would be for you to recommend legislation where the school is required to provide for liability insurance dun sa teachers, di ba?
Well, that's
lalo na
we
for
could look
public
into that,
schools,
no?
right?
Legal
Yes.
defense, legal
Yeah.
insurance,
And
definitely something para
to help protect the
yes,
teachers as
oo.
well. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mayroong mga basic insurance sa atin, yung Boy Scouts, mayroon yung minimal insurance for teachers and students.
And I'd like to raise a question then. Someone from Twitter asked me, CuteJet623, is it also legal for a school to immediately decline a new student applicant if diagnosed with ASD? I'm not sure kung ano yung ASD here. Is it ADD or... But in that case, pagka merong policy ang public school or private school that they decline enrollment kasi may sakit, either it's a sexually transmitted disease or what do you call attention deficiency syndrome or any other sickness.
For physically challenged children, we have special schools that cater to all kinds of disabilities, deaf, dumb, all kinds. But I'm not sure if this is sexually transmitted disease.
Yeah.
But
Or
we don't
any
have
medical,
specific guidelines on this.
Yes. Okay. So
But,
if a school has
I
a
would say
policy like
offhand,
that,
if a school does that, then that would be discriminatory.
Discriminatory.
You know?
Yes.
so under DepEd wala. But yeah, I think under our law naman, you can complain if it's discriminatory and you can file for damages.
Yes.
So, but
I've heard of cases where pregnancy, is a grounds for refusing
yes,
enrollment,
actually, oo.
which is also discriminatory.
Discriminatory, tama.
Yeah, that's true. But I think currently, at least as far as the DepEd is concerned, if it's a private school or public school having this, walang clear guidelines, no?
Wala.
So I think, Congressman, you have a lot of work to do. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. I would like to thank our guests, Representative Antonio Tino of ACT Party List and Director Luz Almeda of DepEd NCR for being with us tonight. Join us again next Monday as we discuss your legal rights on the issue of school bullying. So we have devoted a whole episode for this. And I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno. Good night. Thank you. It is written in our Constitution that the state shall protect and promote the right of all citizens to quality education at all levels and shall take appropriate steps to make such education accessible to all. With the month of June just around the corner, many parents are enrolling their children to the new school year. However, over the last few months, there have been many reports wherein some schools have committed acts that have raised concerns for many parents. Some of these acts involve putting the students' safety at risk within the school walls and outside the school premises while under their custody. Another act committed by some schools are the tuition fee hikes and adding questionable fees, such was the case of Alex.
Isang estudyante, incoming 4th year sa isang sikat na computer school dito sa Manila. Okay naman, pero may mga difficulties din na about sa system nila na parang medyo nagpapakomplikado sa mga estudyante. Tulad ng pagbayad ng tuition fee, kasi dati may ginagamit sila na system. Doon mas madaling magbayad, walang mga conflicts. Pero nag-upgrade sila, sinasabi nilang nag-upgrade daw sila, tapos doon na nagkakaroon ng conflict sa mga pagbayad. Tulad ng pagtaas ng tuition fee na hindi namin alam. One time kasi nagbayad ako ng midterm, tapos sinulat nila doon yung kung magkano na lang yung babayaran ko. Tapos nung pagdating ng final examination, edi nakasulat na yung magkano na lang yung babayaran ko. So yun lang yung dala ko pera. Pero nung magbabayad na ako, parang pinakompute ko lang ulit kung magkano yung babayaran ko. Tapos dumating sa point na, ayun nga, parang hindi nila binawas yung tinatawag nila na political discount doon sa babayaran ko. In-add nila kung magkano yun sa political discount. Sakto lang yung dala kong pera. Kaya hindi ako nakapag-exam nung araw na yun. Nag-special examination na lang ako. Tungkol naman to sa mga extracurricular activities, tulad ng mga concerts, anniversaries. Inainganyo nila kami na bumili ng ticket para umattend sa nasabing event. Tapos sinasabi nila na may incentives kaming makukuha. Tapos yung mga ibang prof, sinasabi naman na parang medyo mag-aalangan kami, parang medyo babagsak kami sa subject nila kung hindi ka bumili ng ticket.
When it comes to tuition fees, what should be included? What are the responsibility of schools regarding the safety of students? Can schools be penalized for acts that are rendered as unethical?
Good evening, I'm Atty. Karen Jimeno, and you're watching Legal Help Desk on the Solar News channel. This show is about making the law work for you by giving legal advice on topics that matter to you. Tonight, we will be discussing your legal rights on the issue of tuition fees and school liabilities, what you need to know about the responsibilities of schools on their students, and what you need to do should they violate any of their obligations to them. Our guests for tonight are Representative Antonio Tino of Alliance of Concerned Teachers, or ACT Party List, and Dr. Luz Almeda, Regional Director of the Department of Education, NCR. Good evening, and thank you for being here, Director Luz and Congressman Antonio.
Good evening, Attorney Karen.
So it's an exciting topic because
Yes.
June is approaching.
Yes.
It's this week na, and of course,